I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. We've got a lot to talk about today. First of all, Major Nidal Malik Hasan, the gunman who killed 13 people at America's Fort Hood military base, once gave a lecture to other doctors in which he said non-believers should be beheaded and have boiling oil poured down their throats. He also told colleagues at America's top military hospital that non-Muslims were infidels condemned to hell who should be set on fire. The outburst came during an hour-long talk Hasan, an Army psychiatrist, gave on the Quran in front of dozens of other doctors at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., where he worked for 6 years before arriving at Fort Hood in July. Colleagues had expected a discussion on a medical issue, but instead were given an extremist interpretation, a normal, ordinary, everyday interpretation of the Quran, which Hasan appeared to believe. Well, Janet Napolitano, Homeland Security, flew to Saudi Arabia to assure the Muslims that we hold no ill will toward them over Mr. Hasan's murders. Clearly a terrorist act in America. He worked with psychiatrists. He was a psychiatrist. There were a number of psychiatrists who worked with him, around him, in the same department, walked the same hallways, talked to the same patients, and they didn't suspect something was wrong. Then those psychiatrists need to be fired. Thought I'd let you know how I feel about it. Here's an article from WorldNet Daily. It's been 5 days now since Israel seized a cargo ship. Point of origin, Iran. Destination, Lebanon. Carrying enough weapons and munitions for the Iranian-backed Hezbollah terrorist group to fight Israel for at least a month. And for the past 5 days, the United Nations has failed to take any action, even though Iran was caught red-handed arming a terrorist group in full violation of binding U.S. Resolution 1701. The cargo ship originated in Iran and was headed for Syria. The Israeli army announced it found documentation showing Iran as the point of origin and some containers on the ship with Syria as the intended destination. Iran regularly attempts to send weapons to Syria, and from there the shipments are smuggled to the Hezbollah bases in Lebanon, Israeli security officials said. Israel last week put on full display its find of hundreds of tons of Iranian-shipped arms, including rockets, the largest ever weapons cache captured by Israeli forces. Israeli radio reported that advanced and anti-aircraft platforms were also on board, with Rani Ben Yehuda, the deputy commander of Israel's Navy, confirming the presence of, quote, very advanced weaponry. And yet the United Nations hasn't done a thing about it. They don't care. They were too busy condemning Israel for last January's fight against the Hamas in Gaza. As a matter of fact, last week they were debating that very thing. The very day that Israel asked them to condemn Iran for its arms shipments. Here's another article from WorldNet Daily, and this also comes from Israel Haaretz newspaper. The United States is considering adopting a unilateral Palestinian Declaration of Independence in the West Bank and Jerusalem, regardless of negotiations with the Jewish state, according to Israeli sources speaking with Israel's Haaretz newspaper. The Obama administration has largely adopted the positions of the Palestinian Authority to create a Palestinian state within 2 years based on the pre-1967 borders, meaning that Israel would have to retreat from most of the West Bank and eastern sections of Jerusalem. the Palestinian Authority, in conjunction with the Arab League, would file a claim of sovereignty to the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly over the 1967 borders. A senior Israeli foreign policy official told Haaretz it's a very dangerous move. The official of the Palestinians claimed that the Obama administration was ready to ultimately consider sanctions against Israel if the Netanyahu government rejected negotiations leading to a Palestinian state. Isn't that amazing? Here's another article from Israel Today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States Sunday. Weeks ago, he had requested a meeting with President Obama, which is, by the way, ordinary everyday protocol between heads of state. When someone comes to America, it's automatic that they request a meeting with the president. You know, it's a photo op type thing. However, the White House waited until the last minute. Even when he left Sunday for the United States, Netanyahu did not have the approval to meet with our president. That came somewhere between there and here. And when they did meet on Monday, the contents of their talks were either so negative or so classified that a near total media blackout was placed on the gathering. He came, by the way, to speak. Netanyahu came to America to speak to an assembly of the 2009 General Assembly of the Jewish Federations of North America. And the White House made him sweat it out till the last minute, according to this article. Things got really curious when the White House totally broke protocol by barring the media from the meeting. Following the 2-hour get-together, Netanyahu left the White House immediately without speaking to reporters and promptly canceled a press conference that had been scheduled for Tuesday. Instead, he hopped on a plane for Europe. That's a going White House, a going Washington. That's the way to treat our friends, heads of states of other countries, one of our very few allies left in this old world. I want you to know, dear friend, that Jesus is coming one of these days. And when he comes, he's going to hold a meeting. It's called the Judgment of the Nations. And he's going to bring all the heads of state and all the politicians that were involved in whipping up on Israel. For Israel has become the whipping boy of the world. And Jesus is going to judge the nations, Matthew chapter 25, on how they treated his relatives. Better watch out, Washington, D.C. Jesus is watching you. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.